I didn't actually want to die. I just didn't want to live in the pain, turmoil that I was experiencing anymore. It was a little reel or something, and it was a guy talking about reframing sadness. He spoke about reframing sadness as...
I got to the point where the pain of staying the same, the pain of change was easier.
It's up to you what your catalyst is. I'd waited until the catalyst was cataclysmic. To anyone who's afraid to make that leap into the unknown, I can't give assurances that it'll all work out, but shit, it's got to be better than staying somewhere that you hate. Don't sweat the small stuff, but the reality is we do. Best life advice I would give is...
Welcome to Fired Up Life, where we give you the tips, tricks and tools to find your purpose and unlock real freedom. I'm your host, Ben, and if you're ready to break free from the daily grind and need a good kick in the ass to make it happen, then let's get fired up. Michael, or Mick as he prefers to be called, is a man who's full of surprises. He's a guy who's quick to smile, always ready with a joke or a line to ease the mood, and who describes himself as a cheerleader as he works to inspire others to find their passion. Release of his recent book, Brave Enough to Change, we realised that behind the smile and warmth is someone who has experienced trauma and situations which would break most of us. Mick speaks openly of his battles with depression and PTSD from a combination of childhood abuse and trauma while he served as a Queensland police officer. He focuses upon helping others to make purposeful change in their lives and how even in the darkest moments we can find hope. His story serves as an inspiration to all of us on how we can deal with the challenges that life brings us. So stick around, because in this episode we're going to hear directly from Mick around how he overcame such difficult situations and actually put a personal plan in place to build a better life filled with happiness and fulfillment. Mate, thank you for joining the podcast. Really happy for you to come along and share your incredible story with us. And we'll get into your book a bit later in the episode around why you read that and I guess some key things that people could take from it. But the first thing I want to kind of get into is go back in time a bit. We go to year 2000. You've pre-planned your suicide. You've got in the car, you've driven up a hill, you've got the gun in the hand, you go stand there and watch the sunrise come up, and you're planning to end your life. Take us back to how you even got to that point where that was going to be the best solution for you.
All right, well, you're not pulling the punches. We're starting with the gritty stuff, aren't we? All right.
Yeah.
Hey, and Ben, mate, thanks for having me here today.
Yep.
Yeah, look, it was one of those, it was a situation where over time, the pressure of the trauma I was experiencing and the PTSD, the depression, and not feeling like I had any options. So I had got to the point where I'd burst into tears trying to put my shoes on to go to work every day. But then when I turned up, I'd put the mask on and I'd just do what I needed to do. And I wasn't letting anyone know how that I was actually crumbling. I couldn't function anymore. And I'd reached a point where I just couldn't see a pathway forward. And I'll come back to that in a bit, but I took the drive out there, planning it all. I saw that as being the end, and I was very specific in choosing a location. And I know this sounds strange, but because as a cop I'd been to so many suicides and deaths, I didn't, and I know the process. I know everything that happens after someone finds the body. That I wanted to go somewhere where none of the local cops knew who I was, so I wouldn't have that indignity. And I just. It seemed like the only course I had left. And it was just sheer hopelessness because, I'd been to recruiters trying to see about getting work outside of the police service. They hadn't given me any pathways forward. I knew I couldn't keep on doing what I was doing because it was just getting to me. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking. So in that moment, I got to the point after all the months, years of turmoil and pressure where I actually felt so calm. I felt so calm because I just wanted the pain to end, you know?
Let's because I think to just clarify for people watching and listening, so you're in the police force.
Yeah.
How old are you in year 2000?
So at that point, God, here's a mess. I would have been, what?
Roughly, we'll
Yeah,
do.
27.
27.
Yeah.
When did you join the police force?
So I graduated in 93. So I would have been 18.
18. Okay, so we're like 9 years in the police force
Yeah,
from when you started to when you ended up
Yes.
on this mountain
Yep.
in this decision. So, and I've read your book, which is amazing, by the way. Over that course of time, I've read what you went through, but if you wouldn't mind touching on some of those things, because to get to the point where you're at peace with making this decision, it's hopelessness, there's no way forward, this is the best option. Is that because of things that you saw? Is it because of things you experienced? Was it because of things that you couldn't control? Like, what happened over that police force career that got you to the point of going up there and going, this is the only way out?
Look, it's a really good question, and one I've had, 20 plus years to ponder myself.
Yeah.
And obviously in writing the book, I delved deep back into confronting those feelings and emotions, a lot of which, you try and suppress, you try and, forget about those times. What I was... we watch these TV shows about cop life, right? And I remember joining and just getting so excited about the chase. And to this day, I still love the chase. Like, the thrill of catching bad guys, all that sort of thing. Getting in blues, all the exciting stuff never really caused the stress. But for me, it was the death and dying. I worked for quite a while in areas where I would attend sudden deaths. I used to do house entries, and oh my God, you get a welfare check. Someone hasn't been seen for days. So at that point, I was working in areas called inquiries, which would go and make an inquiry. Old Mrs. Brown hasn't been seen for a few days, and there's flies around the front door. So you'd turn up to the house and you'd knock on the doors and you check with the neighbours, and you get permission from the station to force entry into the house. Then you'd walk through the house knowing that you were probably going to find something pretty nasty inside. And, to this day, even just thinking about it, my heart starts to beat faster. Again, it's a harmless situation. There's no threat. But for me, that just really seemed to cause this kind of trigger. And, you'd finally find the person deceased in whichever room, oftentimes a toilet, because people would have heart attacks on the toilet in wee hours of the morning. Depends on how long they'd been there for, but, it could get pretty gruesome. The gruesomeness wasn't so much the trigger for me, but all of that was starting to build up. But then towards the end, as I was starting to feel the pressure, there were just numerous incidents where I could feel that I wasn't making great decisions because I was depressed, I was under stress. And, we all know that when you're under pressure, when you're feeling depression, your cognitive power starts to decline. We make poorer decisions when we're in that space. And as a cop, sometimes your decisions have life and death outcomes. And one of those for me was I went out to actually visit serve a warrant of commitment, which was, in the old days, we used to call it the money or the body. So you've done something bad, you haven't paid your fines. Rather than it go to Spur, which it does these days, a cop would come to your house and say, hey, look, you owe this much money. If you can't pay the fine, we take you to the watch house and you serve 1 day in jail for every $30 that you owed. And I went to see this one lady who owed $5,000 for significant fines. I was working on my own, hit her up for the money. She wasn't able to pay. In fact, she was quite angry about my presence and dared me to arrest her. And in those situations, well, okay, challenge accepted. I should have actually called for a female officer to come and assist. But again, I was in a space where I wasn't coping, and I was too afraid to ask anyone for help. So I'll just arrest her, and I've done that dozens of times on my own before. I've worked in small stations. She said that she had to go to the toilet. So I let her go to the toilet. And if there was a female officer present, they would have accompanied her, and because at that point she was in my custody. Mm-hmm. I didn't realise, but when she was in the toilet, she ingested some pills. So I got her in the back of the car, and on the way to the station, when I arrived at the station, into the watch house, she was frothing at the mouth and barely conscious. So all of a sudden, the watch housekeepers and I've realised we've got to get this lady to the hospital. I radioed into the comms room. They gave me a code 1. Code 1 means life or death. So I went tearing up the highway with her dying in the backseat of my car. The whole time, all I could think of was death in custody. Because as a cop, if you arrest someone and you've got a duty of care.
Yeah.
And if they commit harm to themselves or they pass away in custody, you can be charged with manslaughter because you've got a duty of care to look after that person. Yeah. And I'd failed that duty of care just in that split second by letting her go to the toilet on her own. Yeah. I was screaming at her. I'm literally probably doing, maybe close to 200 Ks up the Logan motorway to get to the Logan hospital. And I can laugh about it now, but at the time, oh my God, I was so stressed. I pulled in to the emergency section of the hospital. As I've pulled up, a fucking ambulance reversed into my police car.
Great.
So what I've got is
just what you need.
Just what I've needed. So I've got these two vehicles smashed together. I've got her dying in the back.
Yeah.
The ambos jumped out, and it was their fault. They were the ones that reversed into me. But I was saying, look, don't worry about that. She's dying in the back here. So we got her in, and I just had this night of waiting to find out whether she lived or died, and the guilt, the guilt because I'd failed in that, in the moment. I'd made a decision in the moment. So there were incidents like that in the final weeks and months towards my decision where I was feeling the weight of every single decision that I'd made that had impacted someone's life. And that's what drove me to the end.
What about did the police services offer a counselling or a support structure where you could go and talk to people about these instances and get help with it? And also, I guess, your home life as well. You're at work, pretty hard to go home and switch work off. Did you vent at home, or did you have that support structure at home, or did you decide to switch it off and keep it completely separate? No, look, there was supports. So there was support offered through the police service, as in it wasn't directly offered, but it was available. But if you wanted it.
Yeah, if you wanted it, and if you're willing to put your hand up.
Right.
And there was things may have changed. I mean, I'm talking in the 90s now at this point in time, but there was this huge stigma around mental health. They're always, and even today, they're still, we're getting better at it, but mental health, the stigma around you getting to that point was huge, and I think it still is. And in the police service, it was pretty prevalent. If you were too weak, and the thing is, I was looking at some of these old cops that have been around for 20 plus years, who had seen some horrendous stuff, not recognizing that the stuff I was seeing was equally as horrendous. And even though these old guys, don't get me wrong, there were plenty of well-adjusted individuals who did a fine job and managed their stress and their relationships really well. But there were all the old bastards that would turn up and, the job's fucked. That was the normal saying. They had their mortgages, they had their families, so they just mask it with anger, drink, what have you.
Yeah.
You just didn't admit that when you were falling down. That was just the culture, and it was what I felt. That was how I felt. This stigma about asking people for help. My wife Sandra at the time, she was my girlfriend at the time, tried desperately to try to reach me, to help me. But again, I just got caught in this spiral, and I pushed her away at the time because I just found it so hard to let anyone actually help.
Yeah. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. Just quickly, if you're ready to ditch that 9 to 5 or grow your sideline hustle and live a life on your terms, then click the link below to join our free Fired Up Facebook group. We'll also be providing their tips, tricks, tools, techniques. Would love you to click that and join on it. Back to the episode. Let's shift to the more positive stuff now, I guess. But you're up on that hill, and the sunrise is coming up, and you've now made the decision to continue with life, that it can be something worth living, that it can be positive and good. Talk us through what happened at that moment, and then after you get back in the car and head to wherever you went next, what kind of happened over the following months in that transition out of the police service and then flicking to a focus on Mick?
Yeah, thanks. Look, it's funny. I mean, I could be accused of having taken the path of chickening out at the last minute, in which case, hey, I'll put my hand up to that. But it wasn't. There was a moment of clarity. I'd gone out to Stanthorpe, stayed overnight, eaten a couple of bottles of wine to help me get to sleep. Mm-hmm. Probably slept the best I ever did because for some reason I felt this kind of calmness. And I just wanted to see the sunrise one more time. And and it sounds pretty melodramatic, I know. But I don't know, maybe that was just my nature. I just wanted to see one last sunrise. And I'd taken my pistol home with me, which I'm not supposed to do really, but anyway, at that point I wasn't above bending the rules.
Yeah.
And when the sun came up, it was probably the most fucking beautiful thing I've ever seen, because that knowledge that in my mind, that was the last time I'd ever see the sun come up again. And fortunately, it was a cracker. It was an absolute cracker. If it had been a rainy day, this could have been a different story altogether.
Yeah.
But instead, it was an absolute cracker. And I just had a moment of clarity, Ben, where I realized that I didn't actually want to die. I just didn't want to live in the pain or the turmoil that I was experiencing anymore. And I've since read sort of some quotes about that as well, where people have realized that they didn't actually want to die. They just want to lead a different life. And fortunately in that moment, there was that spark of clarity where I actually recognized that in myself, and that I actually wanted to see more sunrises. And that was, while it could be termed a moment of cowardice that I chickened out, for me was actually the bravest moment of my life.
Yeah.
Because it was in that moment I made that decision to actually keep on going, even when I was so fucking tired or I had nothing left in the tank. I was done. Mm. But I made that decision then that, no, I'm going to push on. And I've never regretted that. I've never looked back from that. And that's part of what's prompted me to write the book. It took me 20 plus years to actually go back and delve deep into, those events. But I wanted to, if there's one person I reach who is finding it tough, my message is about there is a way forward. Mm. You just have to be kind of brave enough to take that moment. And I saw something the other day. I can't credit the source, so apologies. But it was a little reel or something, and it was a guy talking about reframing sadness. And sadness, he said, whenever he gets sad, he thinks of it as, instead of thinking of sadness, he thinks of it as ignorance, as in, often when we're sad, we feel like we're hopeless. We feel like it's hopeless. We feel like there's no way forward. And he spoke about reframing sadness as examining your own ignorance to try and determine a pathway forward that you're not aware of. And, that pretty well sums up what I've realized at that point in time. So when you ask about what happened after that, well, I realized I needed to leave the police service. It was, I was done. I had PTSD, depression. I couldn't function as a cop anymore. I needed to get away from that, which meant I just needed to find a different pathway in career, which seemed really friggin' scary because as a cop, it becomes your identity.
Yeah.
You kind of get, engulfed in the role.
So and we're very glad you're still here. So I don't going to call that a moment of cowardness. I think it is absolute bravery, and it's awesome that you were able to overcome that. With that moment of change, so can you share like some of the habits you changed or rituals that you brought into place, whether that was around drinking or health and fitness or relationship? Like, what did you actually do to go, right, shit's got to change?
Yep.
Starts now. This is what we do. Step one, step two. Like, what was because that's a big shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Going from that police force, that identity, going to end your life, deciding not to, but how you're not going to get back into the same situation, you're going to have to make some significant changes. Like, what did you do?
Yeah, and look, I would love to lay out this 4-step plan. This is what you do in this situation, but it's not that freaking easy because it's different for all of us.
Yeah.
And for me, I still at that point in time didn't actually seek the professional help I should have. I had to go through all of the exit stuff with the police service because I went through the process of retiring medically unfit for duty. Definitely diagnosed with the PTSD, and I was getting the night terrors. And mate, it's 51 now. I still sometimes the night terrors still get to me. It's still something that I live with. So I didn't have a concrete plan, but what I did do, what changed for me was after all that time was actually allowed others in. I allowed others to help me. And that was one of the things that had actually taken me to that point was refusing to acknowledge or let others know that I was struggling. Realizing that letting other people actually help me and support me and opening up about what I was experiencing was one of the hardest things for me because there's in the book I wrote, there's a fair bit of childhood trauma off the back of it where I grew up really caring for myself. So I've never allowed myself to be dependent upon anyone, and actually asking others for help and putting up my hand, particularly Sandra, my wife, who became my wife. And that was the lesson I learned from it was actually leaning on others and admitting when you're vulnerable, admitting that you're feeling these things and actually allowing yourself to feel them and not chastising myself. Sorry. That was a mixture between chastising and castigating. Okay. Because there'd been all this self-talk about weakness and et cetera. And what I really came to realize was that it became about making purposeful change in my life. So often we react to things that happen. And all through that period, I was just reacting. I was reacting and reacting, and I wasn't being proactive.
Yeah.
And, it's taken me years afterwards. Some of the stuff I did subconsciously, now I try to be far more conscious in how I approach, the big decisions in life, the things that happen, and take a more conscious or considered approach so that, all of us will kick the can down the road, right, on big decisions. There's when your job sucks and you know that you need to move on, or, you've decided that, hey, I'd love to go out and start out on my own and start my own business. So easy to just keep on kicking that can down the road until eventually the job blows up or your relationship blows up, and then you react. And when that happens, again, all my experience has been that reactivity actually seems to create more problems, as opposed to if you can be brave enough to make the hard decisions and actually consciously take control and, be a little bit brave, step up, have the hard conversation, you get to control it. And for me, I know that's what's important for me, is controlling my world, controlling my environment.
When I was changing my life back in August last year, I got to the point where the pain of staying the same, the pain of change was easier.
Yep.
So I think, like, thinking about that, like, do you agree with that? Was it similar in your situation, that the pain of staying in the force, it was actually now become easier to move in the other direction?
Well, we'll put it this way. The pain of staying in the force actually had me drive out to Stanthorpe with a gun. So,
right.
Realistically, anything is better than that.
Yeah.
So I had kicked that can way down the road.
Yeah.
I'd been and seen recruiters a couple of years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing. I mean, in the book, I talk about the 4 elements of change being your catalyst, courage, the change, and commitment.
Yeah.
And
love that.
We can wait for the catalyst. You know, I talk about the weight loss thing. A lot of us kick the can down the road on getting fitter.
Yeah.
There was a few years ago when, I'd let myself go. This was probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I looked down, I realized when I looked down, I couldn't see as much of my willy as I used to.
Yeah.
I realized, oh, hang on, I probably need to do something about this. That was a catalyst.
Yeah.
And then so I realized that I needed to, start making a change. And sometimes, I talk about courage in that space, because we can kick the can down the road and say, oh, I'll go to the gym on Monday or next week or New Year's, whatever the case may be. Like anything, jobs, careers, relationship, it's up to you what your catalyst is. What I found in this situation is I'd waited until the catalyst was cataclysmic. And that's what I talk, when I talk about kicking the can down the road, you're talking about, for your change, it had got to the point where staying where you were was way more painful than changing.
Yeah.
Arguably, I would say you've kicked the can too far down the road.
Yeah.
Because if it's that painful, it could have turned explosive. It could have, one day you walk into the office and just flip the table over, right?
It's getting to that point.
Exactly.
I mean, like, I literally wrote down, like, what am I not happy with, or what do I don't like? Like, what are my pain points?
Yep.
And it was like, I'm working way too much.
Yep.
Particularly on something that I'm not passionate about. Not spending enough time with the kids. Stress levels are getting high, so therefore my reaction was now, barking or making decisions that I didn't want to make. Health, both physical and mental health, was not where I wanted it to be. So once I wrote that stuff down, I was like, you're going to keep doing this?
Yep.
Because if you wrote that list 6 months ago, it's the same list. And if you don't do anything about it, in 6 months' time, it's the same list. So the whole fear factor thing comes in. What am I going to do next? What am I going to do to make money? How am I going to make this transition? It's all really hard. It's the unknown.
Yeah.
And sometimes the devil that seems like a better option, because it's, at least you know what to expect.
Yeah.
You know you're going to go to the job tomorrow, or, back to the relationship that you're not enjoying, you're not liking, but at least I know what to expect. Whereas going down a new path can be very confronting, because it's, you don't know what to expect.
Oh, it's absolutely scary. I mean, I had no idea when I took that step away from the police service and actually made that decision that I was going to keep on going. Part of the reason I'd got to the point of suicidality, I couldn't see a way for me to keep on working. I couldn't see a career path. I was ignorant of what options there are. And that was the part that scared the crap out of me, because, I'm a worker by nature. I want to work. I actually love to work. And I was just very ignorant of what my options were. Since the police service, I ended up getting a job in a bank, just an entry-level role, just to pay the bills, worked my way up in there, went out, became a mortgage broker for a number of years, ran my own business there, and then, got almost 10 years ago, I actually started with the company I work with now, and I absolutely love what I do now. A lot of what I do now is I do a fair bit of behavioural coaching. I never knew that this role existed.
Yeah.
I was completely ignorant that this possibility existed. So to anyone who's afraid to make that leap into the unknown, I can't give assurances that it'll all work out for you. I can't give assurances that you're going to find that magic job. But shit, it's got to be better than staying somewhere that you hate, right?
Yeah.
Take the plunge, do your research. I mean, when you discuss what the process you went through, you took a very considered approach. I would argue that most of us, struggle with the self-awareness to actually sit down and actually do it like that. But what you're describing is there's a lesson for many of us in that to actually sit down, weigh up the pros and cons. And actually, when I talk about the courage in those 4 C's of change, the courage is looking in the mirror and being self-aware.
Yeah.
And, I know for me, that's on a number of occasions in life, holding up that mirror to myself. Sometimes I haven't liked what I've seen, but if we can look at ourselves in the mirror, acknowledge our strengths and our weaknesses, and have the courage to face that, then we can identify what we can change.
Yeah, love it. I've got just one final question, which talks to like what we want to do in the Fired Up community. Is it's not just lifestyle freedom and the freedom formula and stuff, but we are sort of also encouraging the narrative of like looking after your body and yourself, physically, because that's not just about longevity of life, but the other benefits that come from that with clarity of thinking and progress and self-love and respect and all those things. You said that you 7 or so years ago, you thought, hey, I'm not liking what I see here. I need to make a change. But what does your daily routine look like as it relates to like health and fitness or wellness?
That's a really good point. So since leaving the police service and going through the banking career and running my own business, etc., there's been times when I've felt the build-up of stress, the build-up of pressure. I'm much more self-aware of that in myself now. And I recognized that, when in order to maintain my own ability to function as best I can, that I needed to care for self first. Now, from my story, you probably got a bit of an understanding that I've got a thing for sunrises.
Yeah.
And since then, I try to see as many sunrises as I can.
Yeah.
So I'm often up at sunrise and I get outside. And what I came to realize in myself is that to manage my anxiety, stress, the pressure of work, life, all the shit that, life throws upon us, that I need to give myself clear headspace every morning. Now, some people aren't morning people. Some people will, drink their coffee and log straight on. And I was doing that. I don't drink coffee, by the way, but I was just jumping up and logging straight into the work computer when I was self-employed, when I was working for the bank, first couple of years in this job. And I'm a slow learner. It took me a while to realize that didn't work, that what I needed to do was actually focus on self first. So getting out for the sunrise, whether it's a walk, whether it's a run, whether it's going to the gym, it was doing something first thing in the morning in order to just allow my thoughts to have time to coalesce. And since going down that path, what I've found is I'm so much more productive when I do start to work, rather than just logging on and tapping away at those emails and then being burnt out by 10 a.m. By getting up and actually doing something for myself in the morning. Sometimes it's just a 20-minute walk. Sometimes it's just a little bit of yoga or something, but it's when I do log on or make those first calls, I find that I've already kind of pre-scripted them in my head. I've got much greater clarity.
Yeah.
And I find that I deal with the pressures of the day so much better. But also just those little wins of feeling like you've done something for yourself every morning. It's a routine for me.
We've spoken about this in previous episodes, like the actual mindset of just wins and little small things, ticking that list off. So even if you just wake up and you go for a 5-minute walk, tick.
Yes.
Have a glass of water instead of coffee, tick. And then you get this momentum of, hey, I'm getting shit done.
Yep.
Oh, this is actually pretty good. For me, it's the same. Like, it's not exercise, 2 parts to it, but they're both equally the same. As one, want to try and live as long as I possibly can.
Yep.
So I don't want to destroy the only vehicle I've got. But secondly, for that clarity and that headspace and actually having you time and thinking time helps process, figure things out, and actually get into that mental mindset of, I'm clear on what I want to do. Now I just have to do it, and then we can roll through from there.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely agree.
Mate, what we do in these podcasts when I have guests on, I give 4 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Just to get your input and advice on things. So question number 1 is, what is the best life advice you've got and why?
I'd love to say don't sweat the small stuff, but the reality is we do. We have our own insecurities. We have our some of us are overthinkers. I might be a little bit of one of those. Best life advice I would give is, exactly as you pointed out, don't waste this vehicle. I wish I had started caring for it much earlier in life, but now that I've gone down that path, I understand that it's invaluable. I want to be as capable as I can for as long as I can. So look after your body.
What are the key routines and disciplines that you apply in your life that keep you on track?
Key routines and disciplines in my life to keep me on track. For me, it's actually making sure that I do have a routine. It's actually, even though I travel a lot for work, etc., it's keeping those routines of, keeping the routine of exercising or doing something for myself every morning, building that headspace, and making sure I actually take the time on a regular basis to check in on myself, to actually look in the mirror, be self-aware, know, hey, what's my anxiety like? What's my stress like? Regular health checks.
Regular health checks. Do you have a quote or motto that you live your life by?
Yeah, I do. Maya Angelou says, people will forget what you say to them, people will forget what you did for them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Love that. And last but not least, the number 1 book recommendation. It can't be your own.
Damn it. Actually, at the moment, there's a book that a friend gave to me recently, and it's called Think Like a Monk. Yeah. It's, for me, there was a lot I took from it. And, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Mick, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you sharing the story with myself and the community. Guys, if you do, and you should, check out Mick's book. It's released in March this year.
Yep.
So relatively new onto the market. It's called Brave Enough to Change. Quick story, Mick runs around this neighborhood and so do I, and I've been passing him in the streets for a couple of months now. And I've just been saying to myself, you got to shake this guy's hand. I don't know why. I'm not a person who likes to network by natural state. And I said, just shake the guy's hand. What's the worst thing he can say? He can tell you to fuck off. But he didn't. I was walking towards him. I shook his hand and I said, just want to introduce myself. My name's Ben. I live locally. I've seen you running around here. And Mick said to me, he goes, are you training for something? What are you training for? And I said, I'm actually just training for myself, and told him how I left the job and I've started this thing, which Mick went on to say, this is hilarious because I've just launched my book called Brave Enough to Change. So Mick and I have gone for a walk since then. Here he sits on the podcast. I guess make an effort to introduce yourself to people. You never know what's going to come out of it. I had to take some bravery there to put myself in front of Mick and shake his hand, which was not something I naturally like to do. But check out his book. The link will be in the below or around here somewhere. It is a confronting book. It is a compelling book, but the message there is regardless of whatever shit you've faced, whatever stuff you've gone through in the past, you can be brave enough to change and actually live a life on your terms with your purpose as well. Mate, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back again in the future.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for joining me on Fired Up Life. If this episode has given you the kick up the ass you needed, I'd love your support with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow me at Ben Vickers Official on socials for more insights and updates. And don't forget to head to firedup.life to grab all the resources and tools you need to unlock real freedom. We'll see you in the next episode. Catch you later.